Hi, I'm Daniel, and the two studios of Pixar and Walt Disney Animation Studios are slowly becoming interchangeable in my opinion, and only stay separate for branding. It has been happening across the last 15 years solely, and if their non-sequel films were switched, they wouldn't be that noticeable anymore. In this video, I'll go through the timeline through the 2010s, and especially recent films, and I talk about how I think Pixar movies going to streaming is a coincidence and not Disney favouring their own studio. This video refers to both the company and Walt Disney Animation Studios as just Disney. We'll also briefly talk about Oscar nominations Best Animated Feature as well. This is a discussion of something I've been thinking for quite a while now. Wanted to say it in relation to a recent thing. To go back over 20 years, Pixar was making films that Disney distributed for its first decade. It was very different to the main animation studio, obviously because their movies were CGI, but themes and tropes were quite different when most Disney films are adaptation of books, myths or other things. In the 2000s, Disney started doing worse financially, and there was issue with the distribution deal of Pixar. Disney made their first CGI film, Chicken Little, which was more like DreamWorks in style. If you want to know more about this film's aftermath, watch Animat's video about how it saved Disney, but all you need to know is that Disney completely bought Pixar. Certain person who wrote Name was now in charge of both animation studios and produced the next two films for Disney, Meet the Robinsons and Bolt. I hate these two films, but it's obviously trying to imitate Pixar, and it worked because I used to think Bolt was Pixar when I saw it. Pixar continued the same for a while, meanwhile Disney released The Prince and the Frog and Tangled. One is CGI, they are typical stories associated with Disney, although they break away from some elements. 2010's Pixar is commonly called a lot worse, but I think it's mainly just Cars too. Well, it's also kind of The Good Dinosaur and Brave. Pixar film being princess related, and the same year Disney released Wreck-It Ralph. A What If Had Feelings film. Once again, both have differences to the other studio, but you could easily imagine them switched. Disney released films like Frozen and Moana, and while on the surface they may seem like typical Disney princess films, 1. They weren't considered official at least for a long time. 2. Brave exists and not Pixar. And 3. They're subverting tropes from typical. Two films in between, Big Hero 6 and Sue. You know what I mean, Sue film. In closer to Pixar. In the late 2010s, Disney released two sequels to the movies which are very rare for the main studio, removing more differences from the two. Back to Pixar, they continued to make movies, mostly sequels, through the 2010s. In the 2020s, both Onward and Luca were constantly called not a Pixar film because they don't feel like one. This is because I think Onward started a new Pixar era where it's changing style of films. Still has some traditional aspects with Pixar, that's probably just Pete Docter directing. But even so, I'll still argue some parts like the pacing and overall meaning aren't exactly Pixar like. Yeah, Monsters University and Toy Story 4 weren't like Pixar, but being a part of a franchise hit it. I don't mind how these films are blending together in terms of what studio they're from, but it causes the question of what is a Pixar film. Depends by person, but before I would think of a certain type of film, but now my answer is just a film by Pixar. There is yes a formula, and that seems to continue with their next films. Turning Red and Lightyear also seem different, which doesn't matter anymore. So, how was Disney in 2021? Raya and the Last Dragon and Encanto you could say are Disney-ish for having female protagonists who could be princesses, but Brave exists so that doesn't mean anything of note. They are a couple inches away from being completely interchangeable. If Raya was Pixar and Yuka was Disney, it would be normal. If I were to rant about something unrelated quickly, in Yuka, Alberto says Silencio Bruno, and I thought that meant brain. Bruno and brain look similar, and it means to ignore instincts of something being dangerous, but y'all all people interpreted other things like Alberto's dad, homophobia, or tie into the next movie. If it is the Yas one, this further proves my point because Pixar often does Easter eggs for the Yas the next movie, but now Disney included too. In 2018, the studios got different heads with Jennifer Yee for Disney and Pete Docter for Pixar, which could have differentiated them, but in the end made the studios more similar. Next, to discuss how certain movies are going to streaming. I know we only did a bit of a timeline, but to look at this, we took out each film of the 2020s for Disney animation. Onward did poorly because of the virus, but also possibly our audience were less interested by the trailers, and by a non-franchise film. For Soul, the situation was still very bad, so they decided to release it for free on Disney+. And on Christmas Day too, and it ended up being successful. The reviews were great, yachts were watching, and it was a popular movie during the time for good reason. For Raya and the Last Dragon, Disney wanted to try something different with premiere access on Disney Plus and the cinema release in countries where cinemas were open. Raya ended up doing poorly in money, and how it was barely discussed. Lots of casual viewers might not have even known this existed, so for the next Disney animated film, they decided to put it on Disney Plus for free. And again, this worked out well, you could be in the most watched streaming movie of 2021. And with Encanto, times were slightly better, and Disney still didn't want to ignore the possibility of cinemas due to how much money it gave them in 2019. Seriously, they had 8 movies over $1 billion that year. The film did fine in cinemas, but only a month later, it was on Disney Plus, and the film drastically became more popular. I was wrong with my prediction of this movie's popularity. Now the movie's being talked about a lot, and I refuse to make that joke about what I just said. I remember watching the first scene clip of the family with Rico before the film came out, and thinking, the phrase "we don't talk about Bruno" will be ruined. So anyway, the next step would be for Turning Red to go to Disney Plus, because animated family films at least do better streaming. Times are changing, not just because the virus that is still here, so going to streaming is a safer option. I doubt that this is a Pixar specific thing, because each announcement comes after the last animated movie release. It's decided by that success or failure. The idea should be in cinemas for automated animation, and being a Toy Story spin-off will probably get a high box office. But I was and am okay with Luca and Turning Red. The animation is more simple, it still has great animation, but Luca was made better by a smaller scope, fitting a home release. Cinemas aren't best anymore at giving films the attention it deserves, Encanto showed that. It's not like before COVID, where straight to DVD or streaming was for either worse movies or experimental films big studio didn't want. Disney is still testing out how many subscribers they'll get on Disney Plus, which is the future for the company. Straight to streaming isn't pushing Pixar back because both Soul and Luca were successful. Raya and Onward are the ones that failed out of them. The only problem is it can't make as much money, but that's not an issue for the film watchers, and Disney has enough money. Instead, it makes more people get the service, which means more money in the long run. And as long as workers are paid the same, I don't see an issue with this. It has been switching from Pixar film, Disney film, Pixar, Disney, Pixar, but after there was no Pixar. However, I think they only stay different for branding. I'm not even saying they should merge. There would be no reason to, as I associate them currently as mostly the same. Oscar nominations Best Animated Feature now, and I will be okay if any win. Out to the 5, I think Encanto will win. Yuka deserves to win the most. Raya is my favourite film this year. Mitchell's vs. the Machines is the internet's favourite and not from Disney. And Fier is the film I haven't heard of, but it's probably great, and it would be good if independent films wins. But it's very unlikely. In conclusion, this is just my opinion and view that you can think differently from. However, I want to specify that I don't think it's a negative thing without having a specific idea of what Disney and Pixar film is. Because there's more creative freedom in ways of storytelling. And I think all the 2020 Disney animated films are great. In my Encanto review, I call it the weakest out of them, and while I still agree, it's not too far off Onward, Yuka and Raya in quality. The film has ruined me, and I disagree with what I said in that video. All have ruined me except me, Ryan the Last Dragon. This might be the best Pixar era. Turning Red trailers aren't great, but I'm excited by the studio's recent hits. The idea looks incredible and a breath of fresh air for mainstream animated films. They don't seem like Pixar, but that doesn't matter at all. From how I see it, I don't see why Disney would sabotage Pixar for their own films. But I see both as being by the big corporation. I still think to look at the film itself, not the size of the studio. I like Illumination. This was a discussion I planned to make quite recently, a couple of weeks ago, which was rare for me. I'm very opinionated on this topic and might make a video on the so-called cinema experience concept. This was quite young form, like all my February videos so far, giving my thoughts in a way that I'm proud of. It is also technically my 50th Disney video, even though that appears including Simpsons and Blue Sky. I hope you enjoyed this video. The end.